This is TWiT.
I guess we've talked about this ad nauseum. This is always the worst week, the week before an Apple event, because there's probably not much to say at this point that we haven't already speculated. But maybe as we get closer, we have more confidence in our prognostications. Will there be something besides iPhones?
Watches.
Yes.
Probably watches, right?
That tile tracker, or we can't call it a tile tracker. The Finder.
Tile-like tracker. Yeah, so this is another Rambo discovery. Guillermo Rambo discovers these 9to5 Mac in code. He found an image of a round tracker-like object and code that sounded like you would have, Find My iPhone, including augmented reality, which is kind of neat, that you would aim your phone around and find the keys or whatever the tile was attached to.
That sounds fun.
That sounds great.
What I keep going back to is that this sounds so much like the iPhone 7 event to me. Like the entire setup to this, we've got a phone that's going to pretty much look like the other one, but get an extra camera, have some new finishes, and have a killer accessory. But instead of being AirPods this year, it's going to be these tile things. And they could basically just rerun that whole event with all of these things being added to the iPhone 10 platform now. And that would make, I think, an ideal iPhone keynote for them.
This is a logical thing for Apple to add, right? This is probably another, it's like services. It's not enhancing the phone per se, but it's adding a new service.
It's with the Find My app, and people can go buy it like they bought AirPods. I mean, it's just it feels like very Apple Play.
Yeah. It's kind of an
it's also
incremental.
An example.
Go ahead.
It's an example of that idea of not innovating, in that on the surface, it seems like this isn't an innovative feature. There's dozens of fobs that exist in the world right now that do the same thing. But Apple's probably doing something different, adding some kind of feature that's within the Apple ecosystem that makes it more, works better, works longer. The augmented reality idea, all of this, that's the innovative part. But on the surface, it's like, well, that's not innovative. There's already a bunch of tile-like trackers that already exist. So
there's also some evidence that those companies aren't doing that well. Tracker pivoted, Tile is having, I think, financial difficulties. It's not a good business. Of course, for Apple, it might be a perfectly fine business because it's an adjunct to something.
And especially if they're including that in some version of services. So if it were something like, for everyone who spends the $10 a month for their iCloud service, this finding, tracking, fob,
Bluetooth tracker
is incled in that tracker.
This tracker, Air Beacon. I'm going to call it Air Beacon.
Air Beacon.
Particularly if it works just like the actual tile does. Anytime that your book bag or your bicycle is near any iPhone, then that will actually log it and track it into you. That's in the United States and in the UK at least. That will be pretty hot. But this is one of the reasons why it's fun. It's recreational for me to talk and for us to talk about Apple rumors. But every single time, it's like even when you've got the whole thing, the hardware, the specs absolutely locked, you don't really understand what the point is until Apple tells you the story of yes, it's a tile tracker, but we're using it for something else. Or yes, we have 3D cameras, but we're not using it for taking 3D pictures. Here's why we put this hardware in and how we're going to make the most of it. They don't do this sort of stuff without a really long-ranging plan and without almost like introducing a new character into a story that they're telling.
Yeah.
The other thing that's really cool, though, is they spend an inordinate amount of time at WWDC and later at Black Hat describing the technology they were using to track objects while keeping the objects anonymous and the trackers anonymous, and just building out that technology. And they used the Mac as the way to sort of talk about this, which is not unusual for Apple. They often talk about existing technology in place of new technology that's going to come. But it was just fascinating. And if they can build out that network and suddenly all your stuff is tied into that network, then that becomes, to Andy's point, like it's like the tile thing, but they have a whole security message, a whole privacy message, and it ties into Apple's massive deployed base of devices at the same time.
It does sound like it's a reasonable product for Apple, even if other companies have had some struggles getting people to buy it. It just feels like it's a natural for Apple.
And all your dogs can wear them.
And no. Let's see. The target market is somebody's going to be the first person to have like a little red rubber thing case you snap it into that makes it look just like one of Spider-Man's Spidey tracers. So you can throw it at your kid's book bag, and now you're tracking your kid.